Howdy! This video accompanies the Westward Expansion Unit History 121. In this video, we will discuss the founding of American Texas. So, let's get to it. In 1820, Moses Austin accepted a land grant from Spain to settle in the Colorado River Valley of Texas. Born in Connecticut in 1761, Austin was the first man to receive permission to bring Anglo-American colonists into Spanish Texas. In 1798, while consolidating his position as a pioneer in the American lead industry, Moses Austin established the first Anglo-American settlement west of the Mississippi River in modern-day Potosi, Missouri. When the Bank of St. Louis failed in 1819, Austin found himself in financial difficulties and developed a plan for settling American colonists in Spanish Texas. Moses Austin traveled to San Antonio in 1820, seeking permission for his plan. First spurned by Governor Antonio Maria Martinez, Moses Austin chanced to meet an old acquaintance in San Antonio, the Baron de Bastrop, who returned with him to the governor's office, and the two of them convinced Martinez to endorse the plan and forward it to higher authorities. On the trip out of Texas, Austin contracted pneumonia. Shortly after Moses Austin reached home, he learned that permission for the colony had been granted, but he barely lived 2 months more. On Moses Austin's deathbed, he requested that his son, Stephen F. Austin, take over the colonization scheme. And Stephen did just that. Stephen F. Austin sold land in Texas to American settlers for 12 cents an acre. Those who purchased land from Austin became known as the Austin 300, or the first American colonists of Texas. By 1830, there were more than 7,000 Americans in Texas, and they outnumbered the Tejanos in the territory. Many had the same attitude as Davy Crockett, who reportedly told his constituents in Tennessee that they may all go to hell and he will go to Texas, after they voted Crockett out of office in 1835. Mexico, which had granted its independence from Spain in 1822, was concerned about being a minority in Texas. Thus, in 1830, the Mexican government passed 3 laws to curb American colonization. First, they annulled the existing land grants in Texas, including Stephen F. Austin's. Second, the Mexican government closed the border to American immigrants. And finally, the Mexican government abolished African slavery in Texas, bringing Texas in line with the rest of Mexico. For many Texians, including Stephen F. Austin, this third law was the last straw. To protest, Stephen F. Austin went to Mexico City to ask for greater autonomy. At the time, Texas was not a separate province within Mexico. It was part of Coahuila, with a government official in San Antonio. For his trouble, Stephen F. Austin was imprisoned for 1.5 years. The charge, not having proper traveling papers. And over the next 5 years, resistance to Mexican authority led many to call for independence from Mexico. On June 10th, a rebel force attacked Anahuac in southeast Texas. This is the first armed clash between Anglo-Texans and Mexican troops. In 1830, Manuel de Mir y Terán ordered John Davis Bradburn to locate a site for a fort, military town, and customs house, tax house, to be called Anahuac. Bradburn encountered hostility from his fellow Anglo-Americans when he tried to carry out his orders, and these included inspecting land titles, issuing licenses to Anglo lawyers, and enforcing Mexican customs laws. The attack was a response to Bradburn's arrest of William B. Travis and other insurgent leaders. Bradburn agreed to exchange Travis and the other Anglos for 19 cavalrymen held by the insurgents. The cavalrymen were released, but when Bradburn discovered that a number of rebels had remained in town overnight, he refused to free his prisoners and instead began firing on Anahuac. The insurgents withdrew to Turtle Bayou, where they drew up a series of resolutions explaining their actions. Bradburn, for his part, appealed for help from other military commanders in Texas, and one, Colonel Jose de la Piedras, marched from Nacogdoches, But before he got to Anahuac, he met with Anglo insurgents near Liberty, Texas, and agreed to remove Bradburn from command and free Travis and the others. But by 1835, things had gotten serious enough that General Antonio Lopez of Santa Anna marched to Texas to impose Mexican authority. In response, the Americans in Texas revolted in the spirit of 1776. Texian rebels gathered at the Alamo Mission in Bayard, which is modern-day San Antonio. Santa Anna's forces reached the mission in February 1836, and on February 23rd, they launched a siege around the Alamo, finding it difficult to scale the Alamo's walls. It turns out that the Texians fight hard. Once Santa Anna's forces scaled the walls, they killed all 187 Texians defending the Alamo, including Commander William Travis, legendary pioneer Jim Bowie, and Davy Crockett. The traditional story goes that Travis fought to the bitter end, and that Bowie was killed when Mexican forces reached his cot. He was on his cot because he was afflicted with an unknown disease. But what about Davy Crockett? Here's where the traditional story draws some controversy. The traditional narrative states that Crockett was killed in the heat of the battle and that he perished with the 187. But as Mexican accounts have become available to American historians, this account has been challenged. According to the narrative of Mexican captain Jose Enrique de la Peña, 7 men survived the Battle of the Alamo and were taken to Santa Anna as prisoners. Peña wrote that among them was one of great stature, well-proportioned with regular features, in whose face there was an imprint of adversity, but in whom one also noticed a degree of resignation and nobility that did him honor. He was the naturalist Davy Crockett, well known in North America for his unusual adventures. Santa Anna ordered his execution. This story was corroborated by Fernando Ariza, a rebel medic, who said he heard Santa Anna say, "Soldiers, shoot that man." And according to Texas historian H.W. Brands, whenever and however Crockett dies, it proved that Santa Anna would not take Texas easily. And as a result of this battle, "Remember the Alamo" became a battle cry. Remember the Alamo. The commander of the Texas Army, Major General Sam Houston, fought the Texas Revolution using the playbook handed to him from the American Revolution. Like George Washington, Houston knew that the keys to victory were to keep the army alive. Again, wins and losses do not matter here. Thus, the Texas Army retreated into deep East Texas, and many soldiers wondered if Houston had changed his mind and they were going to invade Louisiana instead of defending Texas. In Texas history, this is known as the Runaway Scrape. Like Washington, Houston was simply looking for the perfect place to fight, and Houston found it on the banks of the Buffalo Bayou, just north of present-day Houston. On April 21, 1836, the Texas Army engaged Santa Anna's forces in the Battle of San Jacinto. In just 18 minutes, 630 Mexican soldiers were killed, and another 730 were captured. Only 9 Texans died. On the following day, Houston was shot in the ankle and badly wounded. Yet, he captured the biggest prize of all, Santa Anna himself. Texian soldiers gathered around Sam Houston when Santa Anna was brought to him, and these soldiers called for the Mexican general's immediate execution. Bargaining for his life, Santa Anna suggested that he order the remaining Mexican troops to stay away. Once Santa Anna had agreed to recognize Texas as an independent nation, Houston had him sent to his friend in Washington, D.C., President Andrew Jackson. The Lone Star Republic was born, although Santa Anna would recant his agreement once he got back to Mexico City. The new Texas government, now led by President Sam Houston, wanted to join the United States in 1837. William Wharton and Memucan Hunt led the negotiations in Washington that proposed annexation of the Lone Star Republic, but they faced bipartisan opposition in Congress. It seems that there's finally an issue that everyone in Jacksonian America can agree on. And this includes former President Jackson, current President Martin Van Buren, Congressman John Quincy Adams, and Senator Henry Clay. They all agree that the admission of Texas would upset the balance between free and slave states. But Southern leaders encourage people to keep crossing the border anyway. This is the modern GTT movement. By 1845, there are over 150,000 people in Texas. The significance of the Texas Revolution has 4 parts. First, it was another successful rebellion fought in the strategy of the American Revolution. Second, it demonstrates the Americans' desire for land and the South's desire for slaves. Third, the Texas Revolution completes the founding of American Texas and plants the 5th of 6 flags on Texas. And finally, Texas becomes the main issue in the 1844 presidential election. Thank you for watching this video on the Texas Revolution, and as always, may the force be with you.